If you lived your whole life in the kind of paradise in which every dream comes true, you would not need the gift of hope. And you would never learn how to become a sign of hope for others. Because hope is, on the one hand, a gift and a promise that is given to us by God. But on the other hand, it is something which has to be fulfilled in the future. So life is not like that. Pope Francis told us at the beginning of this Jubilee year that there is a close connection between hope and patience. Hope is a gift we are given that matures over time. Now, if you're listening carefully to the first reading today, you will have heard what happens to a preacher when he says things that people don't want to hear. I'm going to try to avoid that myself today. But the first reading tells the story of how the prophet Jeremiah was thrown down a well because people didn't like the message he preached. As it happens, the message he preached was a message of peace in a time of conflict. Jeremiah, at the bottom of the well, didn't lose hope because experience had taught him in his life that God is always faithful, even if his promise is not always fulfilled in the way that we expect. And maybe there's a lesson there for us too, that in times of crisis, we sometimes give up hope because we lose sight of the God who loves us. Every child who is born into the world, wherever he comes from, whoever his parents are, whatever the colour of her skin, carries in his or her heart a promise that is put there by God. As little infants, we don't know the meaning of hope. In those early years, as we discover the world around us, with all its sounds and smells, and its happiness and its disappointment, it is others who hold our hope for us. Parents, grandparents, older sisters and brothers. It is they who walk with us and help us to discover the promise that lies hidden within us. And so in that special way, family is the first place of accompaniment for a child and for all of us who were once children. Today at Knock Shrine, we celebrate the Family Day. And looking round some of the painted faces, I can see that some of you were here for quite a while this morning. Family means many things, but most of all, I think, family is the relationship in which we accompany one another on the path of life and on the journey of faith. Wives and husbands journey together, sharing their insights, their wisdom, and their experience, supporting one another in times of joy and times of struggle. Parents accompany their children, teaching them, affirming them, and sometimes correcting them. And brothers and sisters learn together to share and to live in peace. In a world that needs peace so badly, we need to remember that it is in our families that we first learn patience and peace. In the Gospel reading today, there's a great sense of urgency in the words of Jesus. He says, "I have come to bring fire to the earth, and how I wish it were blazing already. There's a baptism I must still receive, and how great is my distress until it is over." The fire that Jesus refers to is not a fire that destroys, but a fire that purifies. And Jesus is conscious, I suppose, that he carries in himself the hope of all humanity, and he wants to get on with his mission of sharing that hope, which is rooted in the Father's love. Many of you here are parents or grandparents. Like Jesus, you are carriers of hope and truth. That's your mission. And it's not always an easy mission. The truth that you speak, like the truth Jeremiah spoke, may not always be a comfortable truth. You love your children. You want to give them what they need. You want to give them what they want. You want to be their best friend. But sometimes you have to correct them and you have to teach them the truth. You may from time to time find yourself like Jeremiah in the bottom of a hole with no obvious way out. And you may wonder, how can you be a parent, a prophetic parent? Like Jesus, you may seem sometimes to bring division. And it's in those moments, above all, that you depend on the faithful love of God to lift you up and to give you wisdom and courage. As St. Paul wrote, hope does not disappoint us because the love of God is poured into our hearts through the Holy Spirit who is given to us. One of the things that I've learned over the years is that many young saints, people like Saint Therese of Lisieux, or indeed Carlo Acutis, who will be canonized next month, owe so much to the faithfulness of their parents. Carlo Acutis, for instance, his parents were not in the beginning particularly gospel greedy, but they made a promise when they brought him for baptism, and they kept that promise. And it was through keeping that promise that they helped Carlo to become the saint that he is. And paradoxically, as he became that saint, he also helped them to grow in holiness. So parents and indeed priests and teachers, even if we feel far from perfect, must find our own hope in the faithful love of God, which is never taken back. It's often as you struggle to respond to the questions and concerns of young people that you will discover a new depth in your own faith, because the questions are honest and we need to just address them honestly. These are not easy times in the world, when so many are homeless and hungry, and when peace seems to be beyond our grasp. But as Pope Francis wrote in preparing for this Jubilee year, we need to recognize the immense goodness present in our world, lest we be tempted to think ourselves overwhelmed by evil and violence. Dear brothers and sisters, there's a huge amount of goodness in our world. In our second reading today, St. Paul talks about how we are surrounded by a great cloud of witnesses. And what he's referring to here is how we are strengthened, not only by the witness of the saints, but also by the faithful women and men who live around us and who have gone before us, our own parents and neighbours. We too, he says, should throw off everything that hinders us, especially the sin that clings so easily, and keep running steadily in the race that we have started. So when you find yourself in the bottom of the well, don't lose heart. A few years ago, I visited a big cathedral on the continent. And it was one of those sort of dark spaces and lots of little angles and corners in it. And in a side chapel, I noticed a little girl on her knees. I'd say she was about 4. And she had her head bowed in prayer. And after a few moments, as I watched her, she turned around and looked over to her left, where there was a man kneeling in the shadows. And his head was also bowed in prayer. And then she turned around and got back on with her prayer. it was immediately clear to me that this was the little girl's father, and she was imitating his example. And I think it's good for us to know, your children pay far more attention to you than you might think. They wouldn't want you to know. It's a great secret. But they actually do watch what you do, and they do hear what you say. So I want to encourage you, parents and grandparents, and older sisters and brothers as well, to walk together in faith. In every child, wherever he or she is born, the promise of God is waiting to be fulfilled. Bringing out that promise is our mission as adult Christians. Don't leave it to someone else. Don't apologize for who you are as a Christian. Speak the truth in love, and that love will bear fruit in your children and in your grandchildren. They will be the parents and teachers, the bakers of bread, the nurses, the truck drivers, and the peacemakers of the future. May God bless you.